Welcome everybody to session 2 of our Icon Alumni workshops. Session 2 is on life and employment after graduation. And we kind of thought this would fit in really well because last week, well, 2 weeks ago, we discussed um, basically how to get a job, some brief tips there, and we introduced some of the mentors that you could reach out to if you need help. And now that maybe we're on track to like figuring out how to get that job, let's start worrying about other things. And that's what's gonna happen once you start a job, and what are some of the important things you need to look out for. So we did a bit of icebreakers earlier, but before we jump into a poll, I'd just like to introduce like a little briefly about like us as Icon alumni. So today, we'll introduce the people who'll be talking to you, a team, and then we'll kind of go through the sharing by Alice and Isha, who will be sharing a little bit about their personal journeys as they transition from like student to working world and what are some of their biggest concerns and life lessons from that. And then we'll go break out into the small rooms, similar to what we just did, where you get to have like a bit more one-on-one time with your mentors, and then we'll close with a little wrap up and an invitation to our next session. So we just get it out of the way, introduce ourselves again. Welcome back to all the people who've joined us before, not just virtually, but in all our previous physical events. But we are the Icon Alumni Exco running this along with a few of our mentor volunteers. So I just like to ask everyone to give them like a virtual round of applause. You can click the little button down below and applaud for them. Um, Honestly, like this would have been so difficult without their support and help. So we're really grateful for them. Why did we start these workshops? Basically, we know that once you graduate from school, Icon was like a big family for all of us while we were undergrads. And we just wanted to extend that love, support that we got like from our seniors, into like when you're an alumni, pretty much. And hopefully, now that we're a bit older, we're also a little bit wiser. And so we can talk about a lot more serious things like work and housing, visas, and all sorts of other big concerns that you get when you're transitioning into the workforce. So right now we're on session 2, where we're talking about basically your life admin. It's a little scary a topic, but I think you'll feel a lot more reassured that it's okay to be clamoring in the dark after Alice and Isha have shared their stories with you. And then coming up, we have a lot more fun stuff as well, like what's the difference between being at uni and being at work? And then now that you're at work, how do you take care of yourself? How do you find new friends? And also, now that you're making money, how you take care of that money that you've made, not just spend it all at Sephora or something. Alice is laughing because it's so true. Okay, so our team, this is the exco. So if you've ever want to be more involved, you want us to like start new initiatives, these are the people to reach out to. There's Haja, there's Paul, Alice who'll be presenting, Anna, me running all the sessions, Ada, who's not showing her video right now, and Essa, who's controlling all of the beautiful streaming that we're seeing right now. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details are also pinned in the Telegram group, which you can join later on. So yeah, let me give Alice like a minute to introduce herself.
Hi everyone. So today I'll be sharing. So just a quick introduction about myself. So I'm actually from Vietnam. I've been here for about 12 years now. So I've been in Singapore since secondary school. I graduated from SMU School Econs in 2016, and currently I'm a recruiter at Facebook. And I guess one fun fact about me would be that I'm 100% Vietnamese, but I actually was born in Poland. Yeah, so I guess that is the special fun fact.
Awesome. Can you speak Polish, Alice?
No, I can barely speak Vietnamese, so not so good anymore. Yeah, so
Time to test your Polish next time. You can't say that fun fact and then not follow up. Okay. And our other guest speaker, we have Isha.
Hi guys. I'll also be sharing today along with Alice on my personal experience from uni into career. So my job currently is at Zalora, and I graduated from School of Information Systems in 2018. So my job is actually quite similar to what I studied in school, which is not something that I was expecting. And something interesting about me would be I am originally Indian, but I grew up in Indonesia. So I lived there my whole life and I was raised there. So that's something that you can't really tell as soon as you see me. But if I meet an Indian, then I introduce myself as Indonesian. And if I meet an Indonesian, I introduce myself as Indian because, like, conflict of identity.
Oh, can you speak Bahasa?
I can.
Nice, nice, multilingual. All right. Well, thank you for that brief introduction, and I'm super excited to hear the stories that you've shared with us. But before we jump into that panel, we're gonna run a little poll really quick. So you guys should see something pop up on your screens right now. And just give you a couple of seconds while I fight this moth to answer the questions. Oh my God, there's a moth. The first question is, how are you feeling about stepping into the working world? The second is, what is your biggest worry about life and employment after graduation? So there's only two questions, guys. I think you'll spend more time reading the answers, and now we've got about 30% votes in. Ooh, it's so fun seeing the numbers go up and down. So at the moment, it looks like most people are in the mid-range for how they're feeling about stepping into the working world. We've got very few people who are like, yeah, I'm perfectly okay. I got this. I'm curious to see if you guys are like on, the younger end or like have already started working or have work experience. And the second one, what's your biggest worry? Isha, it's good that you mentioned that your job is very similar to what you studied because it seems a lot of people are worried about getting a job that's of their interest. We're just waiting for a couple more votes. Give you guys like 5 seconds. 4, 3. This is like a yoga class. 2, 1. Exhale, and we're gonna end the poll. All right. Okay. So basically, nothing changed from what I said earlier. It seems like the majority of you are really worried but not that much. So you generally have an idea where to start, what to do. So I think when we break out into the rooms, it'll be awesome if you could share with your mentors, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And you can pick our brains a little bit on like how it is to get there. All of us stumbled a little bit, all of us learned from very different experiences. And I think, having that soundboard is also really good. And now, biggest concerns, right? The biggest one is something that's of interest. Obviously, you want to find something that you love so you never have to work a day in your life. I think we've all heard that advice a lot. But whatever comes close is actually getting a job that pays highly. And I think Isha and Alice have something to say about that later. So that's exciting. And security, like being able to stay in Singapore long term. Alice has a lot of frustrations with that or mistakes along that lines. And then Isha had her own story on like struggling to get that security as well. So I think you guys will find this really helpful. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts right now. And thank you for answering those questions. So now let's just jump in really quickly to the sharing by Alice and Isha. So I think we'll just jump straight into it, right, guys? I think one of the questions or one of the concerns that people have is like, yeah, okay, I have an idea of what's going on, but a lot of that has shifted or is threatened given the COVID situation. So, as a recruiter, guys, she's a recruiter for Facebook. Please take notes. Um, what do you think? What do you think about the job market right now? Is it harder to get a job?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And I think this question is a very common question that I have had during the COVID period. And don't worry, I will share a little bit later. But I was one of you as well. So I understand that currently, there's a lot of things going on, and you sometimes do feel lost about it. So my advice would be that to always keep up with the new and do your own research. So look into, I guess, right, the smartest way right now that the market is having difficulty. Look into industry that are currently being affected and industry that are not being affected. So if let's say your interest is currently lying on industry like F&B, retail, travel, tourism, finance, or manufacturing. So I'll be honest that yes, they are currently being affected right now at the moment. For finance, definitely not to a large extent, but definitely for the rest, right? Like F&B, retail, tourism, to a large extent. Whereas on the other end, there's a lot of industry that is still out there, and still very much hiring and being and growing massively. So due to COVID, so tech company are definitely being very popular these days, like Facebook, and other and that would be like e-commerce like Lazada, Shopee, because people are staying at home and shopping a lot, uh, and and also like company like Zalora, Sephora as well. Their presence online is massive. So look into company that have their presence online massively. So of course, then they will gonna be continue thriving during the COVID-19. And beside from that, things like healthcare, insurance, and as well as essential as supermarket would still be booming during this time. So
So,
like I sorry.
Alice, what about, I think in my room at least, there's at least one person who's still an undergrad. So what about, if you're not graduating yet, what can I do about it?
Yeah, so one thing that I would always when I look back, right, and I think that one of the best thing that I did was that during my internship time, so I have two internship, and I would say, I will just be honest, the first one I just anyhow picked. I just needed one internship to clear the 10 weeks. So I decided to just do something random. But on the second one, so that was nearer to my graduation, and I thought to myself, okay, why not I choose something that might be interesting for me. So actually, I decided to do a recruitment internship, and that is exactly how I get into recruitment. So I would say like there's two internship, and yeah, you can try out different things, but do put in some thoughts before you picking an internship, because for myself as an international student, I was quite lucky in a sense that I get converted for my internship. So that would be what I would advise for the undergrad who have not graduated yet. But I guess for those of you who have like graduated and from your bachelor or postgrad, I would say that my advice would be to be open. So just a personal sharing, right? Like I said just now, during the COVID-19, I was very anxious also. And the reason was I was actually actively looking out for a job. So I was very actively looking out for a job like from January to March. And Facebook came about. So the reason why I say to be open is actually to be open to take up things like, to be open to take a contract job, to be open to take an internship first. If let's say the market right now is competitive, the market is taking a hit, then why not be open and take something that is a little bit on the short-term assignment first. So I personally take a contract at Facebook. So currently I'm a contractor. It's a contract for 1 year. So of course, you ask me, I would prefer a perm for sure. But the reason why I decided to take it, because number one, I know how the market is right now. Number two, I also do my own research about what is the potential for me to get converted to be a full-time as well. And I know that for a lot of company, especially tech company or e-commerce company, they actually hire people as a contractor first and then convert them after 1 or 2 years. So that made me more comfortable. So I would just say that, be open to it. It is not bad. Contracting is not bad. You get, pretty similar benefit. Internship is not bad. You get exposure, you get experience. If let's say you don't get converted at your internship, but at least during your internship time, you can have more time to find other suitable job. So that
Yeah.
would be my
So,
personal advice.
Alice, we're talking a bit about hiring.
Mm.
And I think Isha shared a little bit about like the hiring cycle and how
Yeah.
that freaked her out when she was an undergrad. Isha, would you like to share that?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of my friends actually were very interested in finance, and they were interested in those which hiring cycles started a lot earlier. And my major was information systems along with marketing. So it was more of something that required an immediate hire. And so my friends used to start looking for jobs back in, I think, August before we graduated. And even before that, like even March before we graduated. And I was like, I have to find a job like next year around this time, and I'm like already starting to find this job, and nobody is interested in looking for somebody for 1 year or 1.5 years in the future, because they're like, we have an opening right now and we want it to be filled like right now. So then I realized that it's just a different industry, and that people from other industries that might have a different hiring cycle compared to one that you are from. So very commonly, industries like law, industries like finance do a lot early hires, because they need to plan in advance to have their new hires come in and have a very structured orientation for them. But people from like marketing, or people from software engineering kind of background, they don't require as much of a lead time to get hired. So don't be pressured by your peers who might be hiring or looking for jobs, or even maybe getting jobs a lot faster than you, because everyone has their own path, and you just do your best. And what happens will happen like for the best reason possible.
Yeah, I think that's fair sharing. I attended my graduation ceremony without a solid job.
Yeah,
So,
same
you know,
actually.
it was, and well, everyone was like, "Oh, wait, yeah, I've already started working." And the 1st of May, I was like, I was on a trip in Europe, so sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I was
Yeah.
actually in my Europe grad trip taking interviews. Like I was
Oh,
literally
wow.
sitting in a balcony in Barcelona, like taking an interview, and I'm just like, what am I doing right now? Because my job is probably like 3 months from now. But you know, there's desperation, and you're just like, I just want a job. And then I had my friends come for my graduation from work during their lunch break, and I was like, I literally don't even have a job right now.
Yeah, you had to take a day off to attend
Yeah,
graduation.
exactly.
All right. So I guess when you're like looking for jobs, I think one of the things you look at as well is like the minimum salary. And I know salary can be quite a sensitive topic, but I think there was a when we prepared for this session, there's a lot of real sharing around the vulnerabilities of negotiating your salary. So Alice, Isha, if you want to go first.
Hmm. I would say, right, even though I'm a recruiter, and this shouldn't be something that is too strange for me. I often feel very intimidated, and especially when I first graduated, to negotiate my salary, because to be honest, as I was an international student, I was bonded with Singapore government. So my first priority is to just get a job, right, and then get a job and start serving my bond, my 3 years bond. Um, and it's gonna be very hard for you to, like, come in as fresh grad and you got the salary. So my personal story would be that, actually I didn't do any research on, when they asked me like, hey Alice, like, what are you expecting. I actually proposed a number, and that number was way below the market. That so if I have done my research, I would have known the bare minimum. So I proposed a really low number. um and then another thing that afterward I found out is that, I actually said something like, hey, I'm happy if you are paying me the same as the other fresh grad. So that's something that is very general, right? But what I essentially found out is that, so yes, they did pay me almost about the same as other fresh grad, but however, because I'm an international student, so I don't really have CPF. So what happened is that my take home is the same as the Singaporean fresh grad that were working together with me. However, they are being paid extra 17% from the employer, um, to their CPS contribution. So technically, yeah, I guess I was underpaid in the market, but also within the company as well. And I would say, looking back, I would have done my calculation, because for the first 1.5 year of my career, um, I barely have saving after paying for my rent and, um, eat and whatsoever. So yeah, I think have, plan ahead, do some research, but most importantly, know what will be some of the number that you are comfortable with, to kind of sustain you and help you to survive in Singapore. 'Cause I mean, Singapore is pretty expensive to rent and eat and go out, right?
Yeah. I think Isha was sharing something like she, even her starting salary or a salary you were offered was just not enough, but then you had to weigh out a couple of different factors between salary and other life related things. How did you balance that?
Yeah, so first, when I was looking for my jobs, the first job that I got, I was offered a really low salary that just was not covering my monthly expenses. So it was just like either I cut down a lot on my budget or I actually look for a job where I know like it's definitely worth my value after having studied in a prestigious university and getting a degree that I did. And a lot of people would feel the same way, knowing that at least of market rate, because it's something that you have invested in and you would want that return in investment. So then I realized that I turned down that job and I kept looking and I found another one that had just enough, slightly higher than my monthly expenses, but still lower than like the cap that they say for your EP. So then I weighed my pros and cons and I looked at it very much like a triangle. So it's like, in I think it's in the Matrix, please give me if it's the wrong movie, but they say you can only like pick one, but in this it would be like you can pick any two out of three. So it's like you either have your interest, like something that you're interested in, or it's a salary that you are like incredibly happy with, or it's something about like work life balance. So you see you can only pick any of those two. So then I looked at my options and I realized that although my salary isn't meeting my expectations, I am still getting something that I am interested in. Like I mentioned before, it was definitely something that I studied and it was in analytics, something very similar to what I studied in university. And also it was something which would give me a good work-life balance because I had a great culture to enter into and a lot of people who would very friendly and willing to help me grow in my career, especially. So those were the two things that I looked at when I was picking something that might not have met my salary expectations specifically.
Right. I think you mentioned something earlier, like it wasn't enough for your EP. I think maybe some of the fresh grads or the younger students might not know what an EP is and the differences. So I mean, Isha or Alice, would you like to share a little bit about the nuances between those two?
Alice, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So, for international student or for foreigners to be able to work in Singapore, there'll be two type of passes, and I tell you, I didn't know this. So there'll be the EP and there'll be a S pass, and also for there will be work permit as well. But mostly for international student coming out from university in Singapore, it will be mostly S pass and EP. So essentially, in order to get an EP, you have to hit a certain, according to the government, certain salary range. Yeah, and I think that's why Isha was sharing about yeah, and Isha, maybe you can share a little bit more about your story about how actually you were able to obtain your EP.
So for me, although my salary was lower than the cap, which at that time was 3,600, which is what an undergrad had to be paid or an international student had to be paid in order to get the employment pass. My salary that was quoted to me was lower than that. But because I had studied in a Singaporean government in a government university, they had said that if I am on a bond, which is a tuition grant that you have to sign where you pay off 3 years after. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that same scheme, but it's essentially that you have a subsidized fee that you pay for university and then you pay it off after you graduate for 3 years by working.
Yeah.
So was under this bond. And so because I had opted for this, I got a letter saying that I would be favorably viewed when I graduated for an employment pass. So although my salary was lower, I had mentioned this to my recruiter on the phone call saying that I would like an employment pass because I'd spoken to my seniors beforehand and they mentioned that getting an employment pass would increase your chances in a lot of different ways. One being getting a permanent residency, which Alice and I will discuss further later on. So this is definitely something that I mentioned to my recruiter, and I said, please, if you can do your best to try and get me that kind of pass. And then for some reason, I think she might have spoken to people, or maybe that letter might have helped. I don't know exactly what the details were, but I do know that voicing it in the first place had made a big difference. So very similarly from Alice's experience, this is what I have learned. Alice, do you want to share on your experience?
I think
Uh,
Alice was talking a lot about how she got PR. And I think we've collated some points, which I'll show right now, but I think you could talk
mm,
us through like the why you've decided these things, especially that very important tip over there.
Yeah, so unlike Isha, I think I was just not aware about these two different passes and whatever letter that the school provided to us. So I didn't mention anything to my company, my previous company that hired me as a first job. So true story, I was stuck with an S pass for the past 4 years before I actually moved to Facebook. So yeah, once you have gotten an S pass in that particular job, and as the year go by, even though your salary go up, actually they won't really change a pass for you. So I think something to take note of, always ask the question, yeah, and show whatever you have that is to your advantage. And like Isha mentioned, I think a lot of you here will be interested in knowing what are some of the things that you can do to get a PR. So I would say that one of the things that, so I actually went to consult a couple of consultancy for PR application. And one of the things that they always say would be that, yes, for in terms of work passes, if you hold an EP, it's a slightly higher chances for you of getting a PR as compared to an S pass. It's not an absolute, because there will be still a lot of other things that will be considered. But yeah, but definitely will be an advantage. But other than that, there are things that the government will consider in terms of application. So things such as like you actually be able to get a sponsorship letter from your own company, and also be able to get sponsorship from 4 other Singaporean that you either have worked with or also have interacted with, who can kind of vouch for your contribution in term of, in Singapore. And other than that, also like how have you been contributing to Singapore? Have you done any charity? Is there anything to prove it? Have you done any donation? So for those of you who are interested in PR application, yeah, these are just some of the tips that have been shared with me as well. And Isha, I know you actually have gotten your PR. I'm still waiting. So I think you can share some pro tip as well.
So for me, I applied for my PR literally 6 months after I had gotten my 6 month play, like my 6 months of pay slips, because that's one of the requirements of applying for a PR. You have to produce 6 months of your past pay slips. So once I started working, 6 months in, I already applied for my permanent residency. So the main thing I think that I have heard from a lot of people I've spoken to is that they really want to know that you are interested, which is why our main tip is to apply as soon as you can. So as soon as you hit all of the requirements, you should put in an application and not think about whether it's going to be approved or not approved, because the fact that you put it in as soon as you could have already shows them that you are really interested in getting the application approved. So that is one big tip that I got from even my friends' parents who are now Singapore citizens. And they even gave me this really funny tip where you should just go to ICA and just like sit there and then like leave, because somehow they'll just like see that you're there and then think that I don't know, I feel like they were just joking with me about that. So don't take that seriously. Then another thing is like a lot of personal documents are required from you, like your birth certificate, your transcript, your degree. These kind of things you have to produce to the government and scan into your online application. So my online application took probably a total of 4 hours, like including me getting distracted. So this won't take you that much time. So you should definitely put it in as soon as you can. And one pro tip that we have included here in the deck is that you should try not to switch jobs in between your application, because I didn't know this beforehand, but I realized that after my application got approved, they requested for a letter from the same employer that I had submitted my application with to prove that I was still working there. So if I had by chance switched jobs in between my application, I'm not sure how that would have gone. I'm sure that there is a use case for it, but I do know that it becomes a lot easier if you submit your application with the same employer that you get your approval from.
Yeah, I think on that note, like Singapore is a very logical country. Like they just want to know that you're invested in living here. And by invested, I mean not just emotionally, but like financially. So, they want to see that you're contributing to the economy.
Yeah.
I think I've heard stories like if you have a CPF as well, and you contribute to that like voluntarily, then they're like, okay, you really want to make this place a home. So for people who are not PR, if you're just on the pass, the CPF is completely voluntary. But some people have done it, and it was their way of like virtually sitting at the ICA and proving that they're interested. I would not recommend sitting in the ICA because it's really cold and really like clinical. But definitely, if you have to go down, prepare all your documents. Like I forgot some documents, I had to walk all the way across the river and scan it. And like, thankfully, I could speak like Chinese, so the lady didn't yell at me. But the guy before me could not, and he got yelled at. And it's like I don't want that first thing in the morning. Um, so now, I mean, now we're talking about residency, right? And residency, naturally, you need to find a place to live. I know some of us are either living, well, at dorms. We're living at Princep for the longest time, especially for the both of you. Have housemates or need to look for housemates. And then, especially when you start working, Princep is not an option. And you have to start looking for places near work, maybe. So I think Isha, you could go first because I know you've moved a couple of times. Maybe talk us through like how you found places to live, how you found it affordable to live somewhere nicer as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I've moved a lot of times. I've lived in Singapore for about 7 years now, and I think my longest lease was like 2 years. So there was definitely a big thing that I had to do whenever I had to pack up and move on to the next place. So it was really useful for me to know that I could use the circle that I had around me. So that would be like something that I would advise you guys to do if you're looking for a place. Although from the poll that we had just now, I saw that like 0% of you were concerned about finding a new place and settling down. So I'll just make this part like as quick as possible in case anybody needs any tips at all. Also, there are a lot of really useful resources online like Property Guru, 99.co, all of these Facebook groups where you can have a roommate. So you can find a lot of places very easily now. But one thing I would definitely say is that you should watch out for a couple of challenges that might come your way as an international or like as a foreigner in Singapore. So I find that whenever I am asking agents who are representing the landlord for their property, they would ask me a lot of questions about my background. They'd ask me a lot of questions on how long I have been here. And also there's a little bit of prejudice I feel against expats. So one story that I have felt is every time I mention that I am Indian in my little excerpt that I have to send to each agent before I find a place is, oh, landlord prefers Chinese, or like landlord does not want Indian. And this is like very much on the fact that they might think that the cooking that Indians do is like smelly and like they don't want any smell to be in their kitchen. So they'll specifically tell you not to do any heavy cooking as though you're like running a kitchen or something in your home. And it's a lot of prejudice behind that. And at least what I did in that situation was speak up. I used to tell the agent like this is not something that is a kind thing to say, and that's not it's not something that would be done if I had moved in the first place. And a lot of agents also like to take advantage of your inexperience, where they go in and they maybe tell you a higher deposit that you have to pay, maybe 3 months of deposit, and then when you close your lease they'll say, oh, there's this mark on the wall, so now we're going to cut like $1,000 from your deposit, which is totally unfair. But the fact that you don't have any power in the situation, they would just take advantage of that. So a tip that I would just give you would to get an agent if you can afford it, or like at least have someone who owns property in Singapore to be able to give you some advice on how to handle this.
Or ask your seniors because they've gone
Yeah,
through it. Like you can reach out to Isha, myself,
for
and
sure.
Alice as well, right? I don't know if
Mm.
I think getting scammed as well is a big concern. We didn't talk too much about this while prepping, so maybe you could give us all some tips.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been a little bit lucky, so I don't really have any scam. But Isha, I feel you, and I'm so sorry to hear about your experience. And I think for many of you who have experienced this sort of comment before, we feel you and we understand how you feel as well. So whenever you have faced with any of the situation in such a way, do reach out to any of us, or any senior, or anyone that you trust and who you are close with, because I think it is hard, right? It's hard being here in Singapore alone. It's hard to be international student, and even for many of you Singaporean, sometimes you have to rent on your own place, or you have to purchase a property, or whatsoever. I think it's tough to do it all by yourself. So do reach out to people who are more experienced to do it, like what Anna said. And I guess for myself, I do experience the same. So whenever if I say that I'm on S pass, and I'm a Vietnamese, there's of course there's a prejudice against me, right? Like maybe they think that I'm doing some a job that is not
very R-rated job.
Yes. So yeah, so I think they would like ask me to send like to show where am I working at, like sort of a snapshot of my contract, show that my income, what am I earning, so just to make sure that yeah, they can see that I have certain job security here, and about this credibility of what I'm doing. So I think all this is not something that we know when we were in school. I would not have expected that. um yeah, so reach out if you face any problem, and like Isha say, get an agent if you can afford to. They will protect you because you actually gonna be paying them the money as well, right? So if you really gonna be facing a lot of difficulty in this area, do consider getting an agent as well.
Okay,
Mm.
great. So I think we've covered quite a bit, and I don't want to scare all of our fresh grads, our alumni off. So I think personally, when I was searching for a job and also thinking about like whether I should move places, which I didn't in the end. But one of the things when we're growing and changing is knowing when to stop. Like, how do you know this is enough? How do you know you've found the right thing to do? And do you guys have any advice to fit, after you've moved so many times, worked at different jobs, how did you know this was the right thing for you?
So for me, I would say you you get to know yourself like over time, and you get to know what your priorities are, and you might not get it completely right the first time, but over time at least you'll be able to get closer to exactly your ideal situation. So what I would say is that you just pick your priorities. You see what is most important to you, and then you choose from there, and you see that nothing lasts forever and you can always make a change. And so if this fits your needs for now, then and it meets your immediate requirements, then you should go for it, take a chance, and then you'd hope for the best for the next one.
Mm.
Oh, thanks, Isha. I feel less afraid of failure now.
uh,
Alice, what about you as a recruiter? Do you think your first job really matters?
yeah, I mean, Isha and I 100% agree with you guys. And sometimes, as like previously as a fresh grad, I wanted a nice job, a nice place. I wanted to be happy, and I wanted it to all be sorted out. But let me just be real here. That is very stressful for a fresh grad, and I must say, right, it won't be perfect at your first try. So yeah, I don't think that it's something that you should pressure yourself too much, and it's okay to reach out for help, and it's okay to not get everything sorted out right away, because as like mentioned, you grow as you go. So as you move on in different stages your career, like Isha say, you get your priority, you know what is more important to you, and you also kind of start figuring out what exactly you want in your life, and as well what you exactly want in your career. But well, in terms of like what I would advise as a recruiter, I would say that number one, know yourself, so understand yourself and know exactly what are you interested in when it comes to picking a job, or even choose a place to live. And secondly, do not do it blindly, too blindly like myself in the past. I did not do any research, but thinking back, I think advice I always give to people right now would have been that of course it's not gonna be perfect, right? But there should be some criteria. So what are gonna be your must have? What are some of your good to have? What are some gonna be your deal breaker? So for example, right, is monetary gonna be the must have? So then you start thinking when you make a decision, is proximity to your home is going to be important to you? How about things like leaves? How many days of leave you're going to have? Many of you are international student, or for you Singaporean, you love to travel, right? So number of leaves can be very important as well. So will that fall under must have or good to have? And other things like medical benefit is expensive here, so do look out for things like that. So when you're making all these decisions, right, take them into account, and maybe even drawing it out and say, okay, these are the good to have, they are must have, there's some a deal breaker, and then make a judgment for yourself. So I guess it will get better. And do I say that the first job really matter? I would say not. It does, but it's not exactly gonna be perfect and gonna be something that you might be 100% happy with in the future. Yet I think what is going to be most important would be to get experience and to get skill set. And as you move along, right, you start to get more of all this, and it helps to increase in terms of your market value, and then you can leverage on all of that, your experience and your skill set, to bring to the second job. So personally, I think I'm very thankful for the first job that I have, in order that have helped me to secure an opportunity with Facebook. And I think that the experience and the skill set that I've gained would be something that cannot be measured by money or value. Yeah, so I do want to highlight that as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think I mean, just to jump in, I'm not the panelist, but I do want to say that the first job really, it mattered and it didn't. I think that's a very good way to put it, because I started working at a startup that had like no name, no track record, but unlike, I guess, maybe both you and Isha, I didn't really have a good handle of what I wanted to do, what my interests were even. So I went in not even knowing how to make those decisions. But this job at the startup let me try everything. Different industries, like our customers are from different industries. I got to do a little bit of operations, a little bit of sales, a little bit of marketing, and all of these experiences, like, it became what taught me about myself, but also what brought up my like personal value to sell myself. And now I'm working for like one of the best tech companies. So that was really exciting. And I think it wasn't easy. Pay was low. Team was really small. Learning opportunity like was pretty much do it yourself. But I think you guys are both right that it will keep getting better. I think like starting out from school, you're always starting from zero, and it can only go up from there. And that's I love this. I love the triangle that we shared. I think we're always struggling to reach that ultimate ikigai balance. So yeah, I think what we can do right now is take maybe 10 minutes to jump into our little breakout rooms, guys. And for all our attendees, I really encourage you to ask our mentors, any questions that you might have had that you were that were not answered, or anything you want to learn more about. We've prepped each other on this, so don't worry. We'll probably have something smart to say. If not, well, that's what life is, right? Figuring it out together. So, yep, I'll see you back here in about 10-15 minutes. We'll see how this goes. We're all
Yeah.
back?
Nice.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to quickly wrap up, hopefully in the next 2 minutes. Um, Gentle reminder that this is ongoing until September. And you saw the different topics earlier on, but the next one coming up is on the 22nd of July. And it's a little bit more about the transitioning, basically how to start your first job, what you should take note of walking into the office, what new skills or how to go about learning new skills, some challenges you might face, building new relationships at work. Now that you're there, you got to make new friends. It's not going to be SMU anymore. And then again, if work sucks, you got to rely on your personal life. So how do you manage that? How do you make sure you don't like ghost all your friends, especially because the first months can be quite overwhelming? It'll be run by Paul. Paul, please wave.
Hello.
Hello, Paul. Paul has been our timekeeper this past 2 weeks, so I have no idea how he's gonna keep time next time. Joining him will be Gavin, who's not in this call right now, I think, and Shubangi. Shubangi was here. You can wave. I don't know. Yeah, there she is. Yeah. So two of them will have a lot of fun stuff to share with you. And on that note, shameless plug, right? Have to be shameless. Um, re- Come and reach out to us. I think the left QR code is to our Facebook and the right one is to Telegram. We update this with any like photos of the events, posters of the events that are coming up, and then also occasionally like people drop in questions, job postings. I've seen a couple. And if ever anyone wants to collaborate on some fun new projects, that there's some stuff in there as well. Eileen, you are not in these groups. How dare you?
I am. I'm helping my friend to scan.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Bring
Yeah.
new people
So
inside.
so just
Yeah, I'm
to
getting new blood.
yeah, just to like not confuse you guys, we do have two groups. One is like the overall alumni group, which is what you're getting added into, and that's, you know, everything, like not just the mentorship. It's the fun stuff, maybe barbecue, maybe game night, movie night, whatever. But the other one that you were added into earlier today is for the mentorship. So if you've not been added, just ping us or reach out to Alice, I think was managing that. And then you can join like just the mentor group, which is like a little more, I don't know, I would say it's serious, but it's not really because we're not that serious. Yeah. And on that note, I hope everyone's joined, and thank you for staying with us 20 minutes past the hour of 9. We've arrived at our destination. Please remain seated until I don't know. Stop it. Never mind. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.